Have you ever considered that the way you've been pleasuring yourself might not be the best thing for your well-being now that you're over 60? It may sound surprising, but as Dr. Anya Sharma, with many years spent focusing on men's health, I feel it's important to share something that most doctors often don't, especially in a straightforward manner. The way you engage in self-pleasure after 60 could potentially be affecting your nerves, decreasing your sensitivity, impacting your circulation, and even influencing your prostate health without you even being aware. And the real challenge is that it's rarely discussed. I'm Dr. Anya Sharma, and I specialize in men's health. I've had the privilege of assisting countless men just like you, men who still desire to feel vibrant in their bodies, who wish to maintain their dignity, their passion, and their sexual health as they age. What I've consistently observed is that many older men are making unintentional mistakes, not because of any personal failing, but simply because they haven't been informed about the necessary adjustments after 60. Here's the crucial point. Self-pleasure is no longer solely about enjoyment. It's about safeguarding your long-term well-being. And if you're approaching it in a way that isn't quite right, even with the best intentions, you might inadvertently be training your body to diminish its responsiveness. But the encouraging part is that this can be turned around. In this video, I'll clearly explain the 3 most common errors men over 60 make when it comes to self-pleasure and how you can steer clear of them. And at the end, I'll share a safe, doctor-recommended approach that has the potential to completely transform your experience of pleasure, starting tonight. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of the candid, age-specific health advice I create specifically for men like you. And if this message resonates with you, please type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0. Your input helps me to make these conversations even more beneficial. Let's begin with the first, and most widespread, mistake I see in men over 60, something that subtly diminishes sensitivity and satisfaction over time. It's something almost everyone does, yet few realize how detrimental it can be: rushing. Mistake number 1, hurrying the experience. One of the most frequent comments I hear from my patients, particularly men over 60, is, "Doc, it's just not as enjoyable as it used to be. I just do it to get it over with." And each time I hear that, it concerns me, because what they're really expressing, consciously or not, is that something deeply personal has been reduced to a hurried, silent habit. You see, rushing is the initial, and often the most damaging, mistake I witness men making when it comes to self-pleasure later in life. And I want to be very clear. I'm not talking about frequency. I'm not here to judge how often you engage in self-pleasure. I'm referring to the manner in which you do it, the mindset, the energy, the emotional state you bring to the experience. Over the years, I've worked with numerous men who admit that they approach it the same way every time, quickly, quietly, and usually in a hurry. Sometimes it's simply out of habit. Sometimes it's because they're concerned about being interrupted. And other times, it's because they're attempting to push through a sense of numbness just to feel something before going to sleep. But what most of them don't realize is that this hurried, mechanical approach actually trains your body and brain to associate touch with tension, rather than with relaxation or pleasure. When you rush through self-pleasure, your nervous system doesn't relax. Your blood vessels don't expand as they should. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your heart might be racing, but not in a good way. It's the kind of tight, anxious heartbeat that stems from being on edge, rather than from being aroused in a safe, connected way. And here's what can happen as a result. Your body starts to become less responsive. The nerves don't respond as vibrantly as they once did. You might even begin to feel a bit sore afterward. Perhaps you initially dismiss it as a minor irritation, right? But over time, that tension accumulates. That disconnection becomes the norm, and you find yourself needing more stimulation but experiencing less satisfaction. I recall a gentleman in his late 60s who consulted me recently. He was a proud man, a retired military officer, impeccably dressed, and very private. He sat in my office and confessed that he hadn't felt genuine pleasure in years. He mentioned that he still had the desire, but the sensation was absent. He felt as though he was simply going through the motions. And after a lengthy conversation, it became evident that he was rushing every time. No relaxation, no intention, no presence, just habit. And it was taking a greater toll on him than he realized. What I shared with him is the same thing I want to convey to you now. Your body is seeking something different. After 60, your nervous system requires more time to warm up. Your blood flow needs space to circulate. And your heart, both emotionally and physically, needs to feel secure. So, slow down, not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to recognize that your needs have evolved. Consider giving yourself more than just 5 minutes in the dark. Create a small pocket of time where you're not anticipating interruptions, where you're not battling stress or guilt or that feeling of, I shouldn't be doing this. Take a few deep breaths, relax your shoulders, and instead of treating your body like a machine that needs fixing, treat it like a cherished friend who deserves your complete attention. And no, you don't need candles or music or some elaborate routine. This isn't about making it extravagant. It's about making it authentic. It's about choosing to be present with your body just as it is today, perhaps slower, softer, maybe more hesitant, but still very much alive. And that's the version of you that needs to be honored. Now, when you grant yourself permission to slow down, something remarkable occurs. The nerves begin to reawaken. The blood vessels open up. You start to feel more, not less. And what once felt like a chore begins to feel nourishing again. A moment of calm, a moment of connection, a moment that reminds you that you're still here, you still matter. But if rushing is the first way older men unknowingly undermine their pleasure, the second mistake is even more damaging to the body, and it often manifests silently, without pain or warning, until it's already taken its toll. Let's discuss that next. Mistake number 2, applying excessive pressure. If there's one thing I wish more men in their 60s and 70s understood, it's this: your body is not diminished, it's simply different. And the way it responds to touch today is not a failure, it's biology evolving. But unfortunately, most men haven't been informed about how to navigate that change. So, they compensate. They tighten their grip. They move faster, harder, with more force, hoping that the intensity will make up for the diminished sensation. And in doing so, they fall into one of the most damaging habits I observe, using too much pressure during self-stimulation. This might initially seem harmless. You tell yourself, I'm just trying to feel something. And perhaps that worked for a while, but here's what's happening beneath the surface, something most men never suspect. The penis is composed of incredibly delicate tissues. It's not just skin, it's filled with tiny blood vessels, soft muscle fibers, and an intricate network of sensitive nerve endings designed to respond to gentle stimulation. When you repeatedly apply intense pressure, whether through a tight grip or aggressive motion, those tissues begin to break down. Nerve endings become less responsive. Micro tears form in the skin. And over time, your body becomes conditioned to only respond to that one very specific kind of stimulation, often one that no partner could ever replicate. This is sometimes informally referred to as death grip syndrome. And while it's not an official diagnosis, it's a very real experience. I've had patients express with quiet frustration, I can only get aroused by my own hand. Or, even worse, I can't feel much of anything anymore. One man, 72, said something to me that I'll never forget. He said, I thought I was keeping myself alive, but really, I was wearing myself out. The saddest part is that this isn't about a lack of desire. Most of these men still want to feel pleasure. They still crave connection, but their bodies have been unintentionally trained to require friction that's too intense, too narrow, and too damaging to sustain. And what once was a source of release slowly becomes a source of frustration or, worse, emotional withdrawal. I understand why it happens. When sensitivity declines, it's natural to want to feel more. But more pressure is not the answer. In fact, it only accelerates the loss. What your body is actually asking for is gentleness, patience, and a willingness to rediscover sensation in a new way. That takes time, and it takes a shift in mindset. Start by loosening your grip, even if it feels strange at first. I know that change isn't always easy. One of my patients compared it to trying to write with his non-dominant hand, but he persisted, and after a few weeks, something began to shift. He told me, Doc, it's not just that I feel more, it's that I care more. I'm finally present with myself. Using a natural, fragrance-free lubricant can also be helpful. It reduces friction, protects the skin, and encourages a more fluid, relaxing motion. But the real change occurs when you stop thinking about self-pleasure as something to accomplish and start treating it as a form of self-care, as something you do for your body, not to it. Just as you wouldn't rub a sore shoulder aggressively, your genitals need to be approached with that same kind of intentional softness. And if you're someone who's already experiencing reduced sensitivity, don't panic. The body is resilient. With time, Gentler stimulation can retrain your nervous system to respond to more subtle touch. It might feel different, yes, but different doesn't mean worse. It might even feel more connected, more satisfying, more human. What I hope you take away from this is simple. Your body isn't asking for more force, it's asking for more care. And when you give it that, it remembers how to feel again. But the physical damage caused by excessive pressure isn't the only thing sabotaging men's pleasure as they age. There's something even more powerful and even more overlooked, not in the skin, not in the nerves, but in the heart and mind. And that's what we need to explore next. Mistake number 3, neglecting the emotional aspect. There's something I've observed after 3 decades of working with men, and it's not something that shows up in blood tests or scans. It's quieter, heavier, but no less real. It's the emotional burden many men carry when it comes to their bodies, their pleasure, and their identity as sexual beings. And sadly, this is one of the most overlooked yet most influential factors in why so many men over 60 begin to feel disconnected, not just from sex, but from themselves. You see, we're raised in a culture where emotions and masculinity are often seen as opposing forces. Most men were never taught to connect pleasure with emotional safety. For years, perhaps decades, you were expected to be strong, steady, and silent. And for many, that silence followed them into the most intimate aspects of their lives. No one ever told you that how you feel about touching yourself actually affects how your body responds to it. I've spoken with men who feel ashamed simply for still having the desire, others who feel guilt or confusion because their bodies don't respond as they once did, some who were raised in households where self-pleasure was labeled as dirty or wrong. And even now, at 65 or 70, they still carry the echo of that judgment. The mind may have moved on, but the body remembers, and it holds on. There's one man I worked with, in his late 60s, divorced, a former engineer, who told me that he hadn't pleasured himself in nearly 10 years, not because he didn't want to, but because every time he tried, he felt a kind of invisible wall, a discomfort he couldn't explain, not physical, but emotional. He described it as like walking into a room I didn't feel welcome in anymore. And what he didn't realize was that the wall wasn't his body, it was his shame. When we began unpacking that gently and without judgment, everything started to shift. He wasn't broken, he wasn't finished. He was simply carrying years of unspoken tension that had nowhere to go. Once we acknowledged it, honored it, and created space for it, something changed. His body started to respond again, not just physically, but emotionally. He began to enjoy himself, not as a task, but as a form of kindness. That's what I want you to hear right now, because the truth is, emotions don't disappear just because we ignore them. They live in our breath, in our posture, in the way our blood flows. They show up in arousal, in sensitivity, in the ability to feel safe in your own skin. And when we bury them, when we push them down year after year, they become part of the very tension that blocks us from pleasure. So, what can you do? You start with compassion, with telling yourself, I don't have to earn this moment. I don't have to be perfect. I just have to be honest. You remind yourself that pleasure is not something you outgrow, it's something you evolve with. And if there's fear, grief, or confusion along the way, that's okay. That doesn't mean you've failed, it means you're human. And if the weight feels too heavy to carry alone, please talk to someone, whether it's a doctor, a therapist, or even a trusted friend. Speaking out loud is not a weakness, it's a strength, especially for men of your generation who were taught to keep it all inside. You deserve to be seen, you deserve to be heard, and you deserve to feel pleasure, not just in your body, but in your heart. You may be surprised by what happens when you give yourself permission to let go of shame and make room for curiosity, when you stop performing and start listening, because the truth is, sometimes what your body is waiting for isn't a new technique. It's a new level of honesty, one that starts from the inside. Now, once you've stopped rushing, released the pressure, and begun to reconnect emotionally, the next step is learning how to build a safe and satisfying routine, one that isn't just physically gentle, but genuinely healing, one that respects where you are in life and helps you feel more alive, not less. Let's talk about exactly how to do that next. Solution number 4, slow, gentle touch. After we've unlearned the old habits of rushing, overgripping, and ignoring what's happening emotionally, it's time to ask an important question. What does your body truly need now? Not what it used to want in your 20s, not what you wish it still responded to, but what it honestly craves today. And for most men over 60, the answer is simple and surprising: slowness, softness, and presence. That's not always easy to accept. Many of us, especially men raised in an era where masculinity was tied to intensity and control, have a hard time embracing gentleness. We think being slow means we're weak, that needing tenderness makes us somehow less of a man. But I can tell you with certainty, it's the exact opposite. Gentle touch at this stage of life isn't a compromise, it's a return to wisdom. It's choosing to care for your body with the respect it's earned after carrying you through decades of living. One of my patients, a retired firefighter in his 70s, came to me with complaints of numbness and frustration. He was used to being in command of everything in his life, his schedule, his health, his body. But he admitted that his old way of pleasuring himself just didn't work anymore. It's like the engine's running, he said, but the gears won't shift. He was trying harder, pushing more, and getting less. So, I asked him to do something radical. Slow down, loosen his grip, stop aiming for a finish line, just be with his body as it was, not how he remembered it. At first, he said it felt awkward, like he was learning himself all over again. But slowly, things began to shift. Sensations came back. Emotions rose to the surface, some joy, some grief, and eventually pleasure followed. Not the explosive kind he'd been chasing, but something steadier, deeper. It felt like I was finally in the same room with myself, he told me, not just doing something to my body, but with it. That's the heart of slow, gentle touch. It's not about giving up pleasure, it's about accessing it through a different doorway, one that takes you through patience, not pressure. Practically, this means using your hands more softly, varying the pace, exploring different parts of your body, not just the obvious ones, the inner thighs, the base of the shaft, the perineum, areas that may have gone unnoticed for decades. They're still alive, still responsive, but they need to be invited in, not forced. Breathing matters here, too. When you breathe deeply, slowly from the belly, your body gets the message, it's safe now. You're not in a rush. You're not in danger. You're here in this moment. That shifts your entire nervous system from fight or flight to rest and receive. And that's where real arousal begins, not in friction, but in relaxation. You can also think of this practice like physical therapy. If you had an injured knee or shoulder, you wouldn't pound on it, you'd rehab it slowly, gently, over time. The same principle applies here. You're not just touching yourself for release, you're touching yourself to stay healthy, to stay connected, to keep your tissues and blood flow active. It's a kind of healing. I know for some men, especially those who've been disconnected for a while, this might feel unfamiliar or even uncomfortable at first. That's okay. You don't have to get it perfect, you just have to be willing to try. And if you stick with it, if you keep showing up with curiosity instead of pressure, you'll likely find that your body hasn't shut down at all. It's just been waiting for you to meet it where it is. This approach isn't about technique, it's about attitude, a mindset of kindness, of presence, of letting go of performance and rediscovering what it means to simply enjoy being in your skin again. And when you do that, something opens up, something deeper than just sensation, something that feels like home. Now, once you begin practicing this slower, more intentional way of connecting with yourself, the next step is just as vital, but it happens at a different level. It's not about how you move or where you touch, it's about how you feel while you're doing it and whether you allow your whole self, mind, body, and heart to be part of the experience. Let's go there. Next solution number 5, stay emotionally present. I can't tell you how many times I've sat across from a man in his 60s or 70s, strong, accomplished, thoughtful, who quietly admits that he doesn't feel connected to his body anymore, not in the way he used to, not even when he tries. He'll say something like, I go through the motions, but it's like I'm not even there, or, I don't know what I'm supposed to feel anymore. And every time I hear that, I recognize the pain behind those words, not physical pain, but emotional distance, the kind that grows over years silently when we've been told that sex should be purely physical and that emotions are a distraction, or worse, a weakness. But here's the truth, and I say this not just as a urologist, but as a man, your emotions are not separate from your body. They're not in the way, they're part of the way. If you're not emotionally present during self-pleasure, your body will know, your nervous system will know, and most importantly, your heart will know. Without emotional presence, even the most careful touch can feel empty. You may still climax, yes, but it will leave you feeling unsatisfied, maybe even a little lonely. And that loneliness doesn't come from age, it comes from disconnection. I once worked with a man in his early 70s. He had been married for over 40 years, widowed for 5, and hadn't touched himself since his wife passed, not because he didn't feel desire, but because he said it just didn't feel right. He had tried a few times, but always stopped halfway. I'd feel guilty, he said, sad, almost like I was betraying something. He wasn't broken, he was grieving. His body wanted comfort, but his heart hadn't been invited to the conversation. That's what I mean when I say stay emotionally present. This is not about turning every moment of pleasure into therapy. It's about creating space for honesty, for gentleness, for the parts of you that maybe haven't had a voice in years. And that starts with permission, giving yourself the freedom to feel whatever comes up without judgment. You might feel awkward, you might feel longing, you might even feel grief for the man you once were or the intimacy you've lost. Let all of that be welcome. Don't push it away. Don't try to numb it with speed or force. Just breathe with it. Be with it. Because inside those feelings is something very real. Your aliveness, your capacity to connect, your ability to feel deeply even now. So, how do you do that? You start by slowing down, not just physically, but mentally. You give yourself permission to be there fully without distractions. That means no television on in the background, no checking your phone, no racing to finish. You're not multitasking, you're connecting. Bring your awareness to your breath. Notice the sensations in your body, but also what emotions rise as you touch yourself. And instead of shutting those feelings down, try softening into them. Ask yourself, not how do I finish, but how do I feel? Some men find it helpful to speak kindly to themselves during the experience. Others listen to calming music or simply sit in stillness for a few moments before beginning. There's no right or wrong way to feel emotionally present. The key is to treat your body like a whole person, not just a set of parts, because the truth is, the heart and the body are always in conversation. The more we include both, the more meaningful the experience becomes. And if you're someone who has trouble feeling anything at all right now, emotionally or physically, please don't lose hope. That numbness is often a sign that something inside is waiting to be reawakened, not that it's gone for good. You haven't missed your chance. You haven't run out of time. You just need to reconnect step by step without shame. As you begin to integrate this emotional presence into your practice, you may start to notice something profound. The experience becomes less about release and more about relationship with yourself, with your past, with your evolving identity. And when that happens, even the simplest touch can feel like coming home. Now, once this emotional foundation is in place, the final piece is learning how to recognize and respond to your body's signals, the subtle cues that something may be off or that you need to adjust your approach for your health and safety. And that's exactly where we're headed next. Solution number 6. Watch for warning signs. There's a moment I often think about from one of my earlier years in practice. I was speaking with a man in his mid-60s who had come in for a routine checkup. As we talked, he hesitated for a moment, then quietly said, "Doc, I've noticed a bit of soreness down there after He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I knew exactly what he meant. And more importantly, I knew how much courage it took for him to bring it up. That conversation stuck with me because it reminded me how easy it is for men, especially older men, to ignore subtle signals from their bodies. We're taught to push through pain, to shrug off discomfort, to keep going no matter what. But when it comes to something as intimate and sensitive as your sexual health, silence can come at a cost. Your body is always trying to communicate with you. The question is, are you listening? As we age, the tissues in and around the penis become more delicate. Circulation may slow. Nerve sensitivity can change. Skin becomes thinner, and even minor irritation, if left unnoticed, can turn into chronic discomfort or bigger health issues. But so many men assume that unless something's bleeding or broken, it's not serious. That's simply not true. I want to say this clearly. Pain, soreness, numbness, swelling, irritation, or even subtle changes in how your body responds, these are all signs that deserve attention. They're not signs of weakness, they're signs of awareness. They are your body's way of saying, please take care of me differently. I once treated a man who had been using the same self-pleasure routine for decades. He thought he was just getting older and that the growing discomfort was inevitable. But when we examined him, we found minor inflammation and skin irritation that had gone unchecked for months. Thankfully, we caught it early. With a few adjustments, switching to a gentle lubricant, changing his technique, taking breaks, and giving the tissue time to rest, he made a full recovery, but it could have easily gone the other way if he'd waited. So, how can you stay ahead of these kinds of issues? Start by simply checking in with your body after every session. How do you feel? Not just mentally, but physically. Are there any areas that feel tender, overly sensitive, or unusually numb? Is there any redness, swelling, or a lingering ache that wasn't there before? Don't dismiss those things. They're not just part of aging, they're messages. Make it a habit to examine yourself once a week. Gently check the skin around your genitals. Look for any changes in color, texture, or sensitivity. Notice whether there's any tightness or dryness. And most importantly, trust your instincts. If something feels different, don't brush it off. Bring it to your doctor. That one conversation could save you from months or even years of discomfort. And let's talk briefly about your prostate. If you're over 60, this gland becomes increasingly important to monitor. Frequent urination, weak flow, discomfort in the pelvic area, or pain during or after orgasm. These could be signs of an enlarged prostate or other underlying issues. Don't wait until it becomes unbearable. Regular checkups, especially with a urologist who understands the unique needs of older men, are one of the most powerful ways you can protect your long-term health. I've found that when men begin treating self-pleasure not as a secretive act, but as part of their overall wellness routine, everything shifts. It's no longer about avoiding shame. It becomes about honoring the body that's still carrying them through life. And when you approach your body with that kind of care and curiosity, the rewards go far beyond physical sensation. They reach into your confidence, your sense of dignity, your peace of mind. So, listen to your body, trust its signals, and know that asking for help or adjusting your routine isn't admitting defeat. It's choosing wisdom over wear. It's choosing longevity over habit. Now that we've explored the mistakes to avoid and the solutions that can transform how you relate to your body, there's just one thing left to say. Something I tell every man who walks into my office, especially the ones who've begun to doubt themselves. And it might be the most important truth of all. Let's talk about that in the closing. Conclusion: you're not broken, you're evolving. If there's one message I hope stays with you, it's this: your body is not failing you. It's simply asking for something different. The old ways may no longer serve you, not because you're broken or past your prime, but because you've entered a new season of life. And that season deserves just as much care, intention, and dignity as any other. We've talked about the importance of slowing down, of softening your approach, of releasing the pressure, both physical and emotional. We've explored how critical it is to stay connected, not just to your body, but to your heart. And we've seen how vital it is to listen, to really listen, to the subtle signals your body gives you before discomfort turns into disconnection. I've worked with thousands of men over the years, and what I can tell you with absolute certainty is that it's never too late to reconnect, to feel again, to enjoy again, to honor this chapter of your life, not as a decline, but as an evolution, one that calls for gentler hands, a more open heart, and a deeper kind of strength, the strength to stay present, curious, and kind to yourself. So, the next time you reach for yourself, don't do it out of habit, do it out of respect, because you're still here, you still matter, and you still deserve to feel good in your own skin.